Hey everybody, welcome back to Advancement Live. My name is Ryan Catherwood, coming to you live from the grounds of the University of Virginia here in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's great to be back. It's been a couple of months since I've done an episode of Advancement Live. Advancement Live is now a bi-monthly show for higher education advancement professionals. We'll do topics that are centered around fundraising, alumni relations, digital communication. And if you have any particular topics that you'd like us to do an Advancement Live show about, do let me know. You can follow me at Ryan Catherwood on Twitter. During the show, please do submit some questions to us using the hashtag HigherEdLive. And before I introduce my guest for today's show, I would like to introduce our sponsors. Our first sponsor. I can pull up the screen share and show the logo. For whatever reason, the screen share is not popping up, so I'll just go ahead and talk about iModules a little bit. iModules software is the leading constituent engagement management provider for educational institutions. iModules delivers an integrated online platform that transforms how institutions strengthen constituent relationships and achieve fundraising success. Advancement Live is also brought to you by M. Stoner. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with educational institutions on brand, strategy, web design, and more. So one of the best parts about working in the alumni engagement field is the various programs that we do to get our alumni engaged. And one of my favorite programs to talk about is the Alumni Learning and Travel programs at all of our universities, or a lot of our universities are coordinating. When I was looking to join the team here at the University of Virginia, I was hugely envious of my colleague, Kevin Conley, who gets to travel the world, the Cavalier Travels program, and take alumni and faculty and see some of the most amazing places on earth. Kevin just got back not too long ago from Vietnam and Burma and the Galapagos Islands, and so it was of great pride that I got to be able to join the team here at the University of Virginia. So I wanted to introduce Kevin formally. Hey Kevin, how's it going, buddy?
Going well, Ryan. Thanks for having me on the show. It's exciting to be here.
Kevin Conley is the director of the Alumni and Parent Travel program here at the University of Virginia. Kevin began his career with the university over 10 years ago, administering academic travel seminars. Previously, Kevin has worked in the computer industry in a company that produced encryption software and hardware. A bit different, Kevin, than what you're doing now.
Quite different, yes.
And he helped create the internet's first emailed newsletter, which is a great little fact, called The Daily Brief, and has served as a military intelligence analyst and Russian linguist with the U.S. Army. He has also, on occasion, been a ski bum and a beach bum, on separate occasions, of course. And Kevin earned his bachelor's at Harvard and has done graduate work here at the University of Virginia's Curry School of Education. He lives in Charlottesville here with his wife, Stephanie, and their cat, Emma. Also joining us today, I'm pleased to introduce Robin Albing, joined Alumni Relations in May 2013 at Dartmouth College as the Director of Continuing Education and Travel. Robin spent the last 25 years running Albing International Marketing, a management consulting firm with offices in New York, Delhi, and Frankfurt. An internationally recognized expert on marketing to baby boomers and to millennials. Very important audiences, of course, for Dartmouth programs. Robin has extensive experience in market research and analysis, strategic planning, and helping organizations expand their reach to new audiences abroad. Upon selling her business, she has embarked on a new career up in Hanover, New Hampshire, in higher education, and returned to Dartmouth, where she also did her MBA at the Tuck School. Hey, Robin, how's it going?
Hi.
And full disclosure for everybody, I actually grew up in Hanover, New Hampshire, so I do have some level of bias towards Dartmouth College and featuring the great work that's happening up there. And I have to imagine, we were just talking before the show about the frigid weather up in New England, but you know what? It is equally as frigid down here. So my whole rationale for moving to the south is somewhat nullified here at this part of the winter. But Robin, thank you for joining us.
Well, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
So let's go ahead and get started. First question, Robin, is let's talk a little bit about the Dartmouth on Location program. Can you talk a little bit about the strategy behind the Dartmouth on Location initiative and how your programming works for it?
Sure. As Ryan just mentioned, Dartmouth is located in Hanover, New Hampshire. We're not exactly in a major city. Our alumni don't often just drop in here. They do come back for homecoming and reunions, but they don't drop into our offices or on our campus that often to find out what's going on. So sometimes we think it's important to take Dartmouth to them. Dartmouth is known as the #1 teaching university in the country. At least that's what it was ranked by U.S. News and World Report. So we like to make sure that every one of the programs we do is educationally based. And our Dartmouth on Location is really a chance for us to take the Dartmouth classroom to cities and regions around the U.S. and soon in places around the world. Our strategy is to go to big cities, and our strategy is to go to small cities. And sometimes we're in New York or Boston, and sometimes we're in Detroit or Cleveland. Sometimes they're tied into museum exhibits, where we bring a Dartmouth professor in to explain a museum exhibit, like we just did at an event in Denver. And sometimes they might be tied to science or to recreation or to a number of other subjects. It has been a highly successful program here at Dartmouth. It started out with just a few programs per year, and we're now up to about 15 a year. Next year we'll be in the 20s with 20 different programs around the U.S.
Yeah, fantastic. When I came across your program, I was definitely very impressed. And Kevin, the Cavalier Travels program at the University of Virginia, could you introduce the audience to it? And it's sort of like UVA on location, but not quite exactly, a little bit different.
That's correct. A little bit different. We started about 8 years ago. The travel program used to be at the Alumni Association, and then after a year-long study of what alumni wanted from the university, we created the Office of Engagement, and then also the Cavalier Travels program, which is both are inside the university as opposed to being located in the Alumni Association. But part of the reason for that is that the participants or alumni said that they wanted more educational travel, and so we would feature faculty on almost every trip, and that they wanted it more to be exclusively UVA. And so in order to do that, it kind of costs money, or it doesn't generate revenue really, which an alumni association would need. And so that's when we started Cavalier Travels.
Great. And so thinking about, Kevin talked a little bit about exclusivity and some of the other potential components that develop the framework for the program that it is now. Robin, can you talk a little bit about the success elements needed to produce a great Dartmouth on Location event? Which of your events have been the most successful? Is success about sort of quality or quantity when it comes to attendance?
Well, I would say that there are three components that are very important to a successful Dartmouth on Location: organization, marketing, and content. We have a great staff, so I would like to say, organize extremely well. Our staff is terrific, albeit it's a lean staff. We utilize a real array of marketing tools. We're constantly asking our alumni how they want to receive information, and we're monitoring the success. We seek out topics of high interest, so the content is very important. And you ask about quantity versus quality as far as measuring success. Not every one of our areas has a high number of alumni in the area, so not every event is a large event. Sometimes it's a small event. We measure success by the continued relationship that we have with the alumni in the area. This past weekend we had 250 people at an event in Denver, but we had an event this fall in Cleveland that had 30 people, and we considered both of them highly successful because the feedback we're getting from the alumni in both areas has been extremely strong.
That's great. That's great. And Kevin, what have you learned about putting together a successful trip or event? That's probably true for us, right? That we don't really have huge pockets of alumni around the world, but in your case, we're talking more about taking alumni and bringing them to other locations.
We do. I tend to like our trips kind of smaller because I can it's more of an engagement opportunity. We have more time to spend with people, to chat with them, and them to chat with each other, and us to introduce them to one another. If a trip gets too large or an event is too large, people kind of get lost. You can't really touch everybody on the program. As far as putting together successful trips, it's using excellent trip operators that understand what we're doing. That they have to sell, and we understand that, but we use operators that understand why we want faculty on trips and understand that we're about engagement more than just selling travel. We aren't cheap travel. We want high quality and everything that we do. We can't compete on price, especially since we do bring faculty and staff on trips, and we do a lot of extra things that a regular travel program or just a general trip that you bought off the internet or off of the New York Times Sunday edition doesn't include what we include. And so that's very important. And then we also have excellently trained staff whose job it is to help alumni get to know each other, make sure that they're having a great vacation, and also help with the engagement aspects of what we're trying to do. And we have a very high return traveler rate, and that helps us build the program, of course, and it makes the sales a lot easier, of course. So that's kind of what we use to make a trip and make it successful. Mm-hmm. Event-wise, we do try to have enough engagement staff to engage with the participants. Like we have tailgate parties before football games, and they can get rather large. And if we don't have enough staff there to welcome people, then people might come in and not get welcomed, and then they might wander off to somewhere else. But we want them to be there with us, and so I think having the right amount of trained staff is very important for an event. And a successful trip. If a trip gets over 30 people, then I generally like to have two staff on the trip. I don't always get my way on that, but that's what I like.
Well, I mean, it's hard to imagine not wanting to go on one of your trips, Kevin. I mean, one of the my wife doesn't really want me to go because it means being away for about 10 days to 2 weeks. But it's some of the places that you go are absolutely amazing. And Robin, so when thinking about Dartmouth on Location a little bit more, you're largely bringing alumni and faculty together in specific U.S. destinations for events. So, here at UVA, we in this engagement office, we have our UVA Clubs program. You also have alumni clubs. Is there coordination between the local volunteers for the alumni clubs and the Dartmouth on Location programming? How are those two programmings connected, if they are at all?
Well, we work closely with our clubs to get the word out, especially. The clubs are very supportive. They're also really happy that we run these events because they don't have to. They
Right.
love coming to the events, and they love supporting them. We do our own marketing for them. And we are expanding beyond our borders as well. As I mentioned, in 2014 we'll have 15. In 2015 it'll be in the 20s. This year we're holding our first offshore event in London, our first Dartmouth on Location in London. We've done a few mini events in Delhi and Beijing, but in association with the clubs in those locations too, where the clubs again are extremely supportive.
And it's great to combine it, and I know what you mean when it comes to having these high-level events in places. You guys are organizing them, so it means the volunteers don't necessarily have to. Mm-hmm. Kevin, when it comes to Cavalier Travel, sort of integrating our lifetime learning component in our UVA Global Network, our club events into it. Can you talk a little bit about how the programs within our office are connected to Alumni and Parent Travel, as well as working together with our colleagues in the Alumni Association?
Mm-hmm. Yes, but we send staff on every trip, and as I mentioned, trained staff. And so with the number of trips that we have, of course, I don't staff everything, and my assistant director doesn't either. We need to actually be here in the office a good bit. So we do use staff from the Alumni Association, and then also from here in the Office of Engagement. The way we work together is definitely with the alumni education. We definitely share information about faculty members, and they'll often be used by Lifetime Learning before they are with Cavalier Travels, and then we'll find out if they do a great job there. Then we'll evaluate them for traveling on a trip. We have Lifetime Learning has pre-game lecture series called More Than the Score, which I think we're going to talk about later. But we'll set up a table there and engage with travelers as they come to those events as well, and we'll set up our brochures and kind of try to get the word out. It will also help them promote their programs amongst our past travelers, who we have a lot of communication with throughout the time. We've tried to, always keep in mind that alumni travel is about engagement. It's not about selling travel, and it's not about making money. Our job is to engage alum and get them to engage with one another and engage with the university. And so we do way more than just trips as far as our mission is concerned here. We try to treat Capital Travelers as an AIG, or an alumni interest group. And we do a lot of things throughout the year to engage with them, even when they're not on a trip. So, for example, we do the pregame tailgate parties before every home football game. We'll also, if there's a bowl game, we'll go there, of course, and engage with local alum on that site. We have tickets for basketball games and baseball games, and we'll give those out and have alum come, who are maybe from out of town when they come, or locals, and have them come, or we'll do a suite at a baseball game, or recently we did a suite at women's basketball game, and invite travelers and potential travelers to those events and kind of engage with them and get to know them better and treat them special, like they know they're being treated special as a past traveler. Mm-hmm. We also, of course, give them the opportunity to sign up for trips before they're open to the rest of the alumni population, and that helps us get a high return rate as well for travelers. And I find that past travelers on a trip kind of make things smoother because they already trust me and they trust us, and they know they're going to have a great time. Whereas somebody else, their first time on a trip, they're not sure if they spent their money well. They don't know if they like me, and they don't know if I like them. They don't know if what it's going to be like. But of course, the second time on a trip, they already know that they've spent their money well. They're going to get a good deal, for their money, and that they're going to have fun, and that we do like them. We like all of our alum, of course, and we train our staff to treat them that way.
Yeah, Kevin, one of the things I like about your program so much is you really do have this robust, almost full circle approach to not only the stewardship of the folks who have been on the programs, but using those stewardship opportunities to sort of additionally promote future opportunities, connect people, help foster that growth, connections with both the university and with each other. And I think it really is about that shared experience that people have within your program that keeps people coming back, and I think that it's a really great program.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Robin, sort of switching gears a little bit to your direction. We've talked a little bit about Dartmouth on Location, which is different than your alumni travel program. Perhaps more similar to the program that we have here at Virginia. For the folks watching the show that don't have a program like yours, could you tell everyone what they're all about?
Our program is similar to UVA's. In fact, I was listening to what Kevin had to say, and a lot of the reasons for engagement and our reasons for the program in the first place are very similar. Our travel program focuses, as I said before, heavily on education, providing more than what a tour operator alone could provide to our travelers. We try to send a faculty leader on every trip, and I think this year we're going to be very close to that. In a recent survey, our alumni just told us that the reason they travel with us, in fact, the #1 reason, was because of the educational component. And the next reason for them to travel with us wasn't even close. 70% said the reason they travel with us is because of that educational component. The next reason was because they know it's going to be a quality trip. And that was 30%, so that really the educational component is really important. It's an opportunity also for them to spend time with their Dartmouth friends and make new ones. And for some, I will say that a travel program is a way to take them safely to places they may not be as comfortable traveling on their own. They love also, and this is a good reason for a university to have a travel program, they love the fact that it's run by our office using high-quality tour operators. That's that reinforcement of it being a quality trip. So all of those things work together. And somebody said to me recently, if you were starting from scratch, would you do it? And I said, I'm not sure of the answer of that, but I know right now I wouldn't take it away because it's so important to what Dartmouth is all about.
Very interesting thought there. If given the opportunity to start over again, would you do it versus is it a really important component of the university as it stands right now. Kevin, your travel program may be a bit different than Robin's, but I think one similarity is that all of the trips, or I should say not all of them, are exclusively with University of Virginia alumni. I think a large part of your industry is about sort of connecting with other universities in the travel endeavors. Is that true?
That is partially true. We have we do partner with similar like-minded universities on certain trips and events. Our land-based trips, typically we would have we try to shoot for exclusively UVA, unless it's something very special that I'm not certain will get enough people to make the trip happen. And so in that case, we've actually partnered. Dartmouth is one of our main partners on trips.
We love traveling together.
We did, actually. A few years ago, we partnered on an eclipse, a total solar eclipse trip in China with Dartmouth, and we actually were able to fill it between the two schools. Something like that is harder to fill by ourselves. And also on the private jet trips and on ship-based trips, we'll often partner with other like-minded schools, including Dartmouth. And the reason I say like-minded schools is meaning that they run it the way that we do as well, that it's high quality, that it has the educational components, and that we care about those pieces. We partnered in the past a long time ago with schools that didn't see it that way, and we end up having to do the work of the staff on the trip for the other schools, and that takes us away from being able to staff our own people. We do, so I guess it is very similar. So ours is typically, we would cancel a land-based trip if we don't have enough people to be able to send faculty. And I'm not sure if Dartmouth, you might be doing that now, actually. You didn't a few years ago, but that could have changed. And I think that, we're both doing a lot better as far as filling trips, and so I think that might have and selecting the right trips that will fill. And as we grow our past traveler base, it's a lot easier to fill trips because they return sometimes several times a year, and that helps us fill trips. And I think Dartmouth has been growing their base equally as well. One thing, Ryan, I meant to mention earlier when we were talking about the robustness of the travel programs and other things that we do and how we work with the UVA Global or the UVA Clubs program is that we sometimes will send faculty in a day or two early. We've done this in places like Istanbul, and then we'll send out an invitation to local alumni and parents in that area to come and maybe have a lecture from our faculty member that we're already flying over there for the trip. And that's actually helped us build some clubs. Like we helped start the Istanbul club because once we got these 30 or 40 people together, then they're like, well, we want a club. I would tell them about the clubs program and what we expect from it. And they're like, well, we want a club. What do you want us to do? Ask for money? And we're like, no, actually, that's not it. We want you to talk about the University of Virginia. If you see top-tier students or your children know top-tier students that are well-rounded, you can talk about University of Virginia and perhaps encourage them to apply. And so that'll help us generate a higher quality level of applicant, of course, among many other things. And we have the Student Ambassadors Program, where students that go back home and talk to their, represent themselves or represent students on their club boards, which is very interesting, which is not really a travel thing. I'm sorry I'm segueing into that. But anyway, I wanted to mention that because I failed previously.
Yeah, great point. One of the things I love about the whole concept of the alumni travel is the great things that happen when the alumni get together and start brainstorming and dreaming and experiencing life out of their comfort zone. I think that there's some really amazing stuff that happens out around the world. Robin, before your next question, I wanted to ask you: have you ever been on one of those around the world trips?
Personally?
Yeah.
No, I wish, but no.
I figured maybe you could have figured out a way to get one of those free spots on there,
Actually, I take that back. Back when I was a student, I did a round the world trip when I was a very poor, cheap student. But
wow. Maybe it would have been a different sort of around the world trip.
It was a very different kind of trip from an alumni trip.
I believe it probably was.
I've been invited on the around the world, but I couldn't stay out of the office for 23 days.
Yeah, it's a really big time commitment.
It is, yes. It would be a lot easier to sell, but once you've experienced it, but unfortunately it's just a long time away.
I believe it. So sort of the next questions for both of you guys is about sort of for folks who are considering an alumni travel, alumni education program, but alumni travel particularly, and want to start it, get it up off the ground. Could you talk about some tips that you might have, Robin, as far as working with tour operators, other universities? What are some fundamentals that folks should be thinking about?
Well, I think to begin with, you have to think very strategically and back into it. You go back a little further than just selecting tour operators. First of all, you have to determine what your objectives are for the program. Is it engagement exclusively? Is it revenue generating? Kevin spoke about this a little bit, or is it a combination? In our area, it's a bit of a combination. We do generate some revenue. It's completely rolled back into programs for the alumni, which is the only reason that we do this, is to make sure that it's all about the alumni. So once that happens, and once that's been established, I think it's important to look at, if you were starting a program, established tour operators, the leaders in affiliated travel, because you want your program to be successful. But when you get to the stage where we are, you begin looking at it as a portfolio, where you have a mix of established tour operators that help with your programs and they are fully reliable, as well as testing some new programs. I love to mention this. We haven't used this operator yet, but I'd love to. We have someone that came to us who is starting a company that comes out of the business school here at Dartmouth. He's starting an adventure travel company. I'd love to be able to use him down the road, but we're going to have to test him very carefully to make sure that his operation is up to our quality standards. But it would be really interesting to use this new entrepreneurial company that comes from a Dartmouth business graduate.
Yeah, great. And Kevin, some important tips that you have as far as developing a great travel program?
Well, I think Robin, hit the nail on the head. That's remembering what our business is, and as a university, our business is engagement, not travel. And so we are, we're selling travel, but it's really all about engagement. I do agree with Robin about having to vet operators very, very carefully. We won't even talk to an operator that hasn't worked with at least 3 of the leaders in our industry. If I don't have references from Dartmouth and Harvard and Stanford, then I probably won't even talk to them, because their travel companies come out of the woodwork all the time, including some alum. And we learned back in September 11th, a lot of these smaller mom and pop shops disappeared, just went out of business when the industry crashed. And of course, a lot of them had alum deposits. Now, this didn't happen to me, but it did happen to a lot of our colleagues in the field, where they, just disappeared, and then huge, lawsuits and whatnot. And so, selecting well-established, long-term established operators is very important. Our program is about engagement, and so when we're on a trip, and one reason we like to do the exclusive land-based in particular is that it's all about the University of Virginia. We do trivia contests. We start every trip with a toast to our founder, Mr. Jefferson, and we want people to talk about the university and their experiences at the university. We have everybody write a bio about themselves and submit it before the trip, and then we put them together in a book and mail them back out again, so that they can begin breaking the ice and begin starting to know one another. And so that's the focus for us. Again, like I said, we don't compete on price. We can't compete on price. Really, we try to get good quality and good prices for our alum, but it's not really about having the cheapest travel out there. But again, that's determining what you can do and what you should do. Fortunately, I've been able to be given that mandate here, that it wasn't about selling or making money, that it was about engagement and connecting alum to one another. So that's a very key point, I guess.
So sort of kind of continuing on the thoughts of alumni connections, Robin, I have to imagine when you've been out and around the world on a trip or at an event, or particularly on a trip, and you've been wearing a Dartmouth sweatshirt or a winter hat, or someone in your group has, and you've been in Rome or wherever, and someone just yells from across a big parking lot, "Hey, I'm from Dartmouth, I'm an alum." I have to imagine there's some great stories out there, maybe similar to that one or others.
Well, that can happen. it's interesting. You will find that often happens, that you'll connect with somebody who said, especially something like going to a bazaar in a far-off city, and someone says, "Oh, my brother went to Dartmouth." But when you asked about a favorite story, I have to share one that just happened. I was in India in November with one of our groups, and I love this story because it helped to combine everybody's strengths. The tour operator, mine, and some of the people on the trip. And it had to do with our people when they travel are not usually going on a trip because they want to shop. That's not their main experience. They're going for education. However, we were traveling in November. It was before the holidays. One family on the trip had a wedding coming, and they were really interested in visiting some quality places to do some quality shopping. I did a lot of business in India, so I was able to share some of that information with them, and one of the travelers was as well. We knew some of the same shops. The thing that's beautiful about some of these tour operators that we work with is that they are flexible. Even though the trip may be set, they're very flexible, and we were able to shift gears and move to some of the spots that were appropriate. And I'll tell you, afterwards I got more notes back from the alums. They were so pleased because they were able to see some new sites and actually buy some of those products that they were looking for. Normally, it wouldn't have been what we would have ever directed the tour operator to do, but it just happened to be the right thing to do. And if they're a quality operator, they'll work with you on it. We're also, just one other thing, we're finding with some of the consumers now that are on our trips, some of these travelers, some of these alumni are really interested in that element of flexibility. Our travelers are getting into the new baby boomer generation, and flexibility is really important to them.
Good thought. And Kevin, so there are a lot of amazing things that happen on trips. But there's also some bad things that happen from time to time, and I know we've talked about a few of those. Could you tell a couple of stories for us?
Well, I've been in hospitals all over the world with travelers. Over time, that's what happens. We've only had one fatality on a trip, and that was a heart attack, and that was actually here in the States on a domestic trip. Other things are that have occurred overseas. We've had people falling and breaking things, or somebody with pre-existing conditions and something happens with them. All of our staff are trained in CPR and how to deal with emergencies and how to deal with situations. We also purchase MEDEX, or medical evacuation insurance, the same that we use for our faculty and students when they're on study abroad programs, is what we purchase for our alumni travelers. And this helps us find where the best hospitals are, or helps with translation services. It covers a lot. It can help get a family member to the bedside if necessary, and we've had to use that several times as well. So yeah, but we try to, prevent accidents as much as possible. I always hop off the bus first and make sure that people notice there's a curb there, so somebody doesn't twist their ankle as they're getting off the bus. And a lot of times it's a lot easier to prevent something like that from happening. It's a lot easier to prevent it than to deal with it once it's happened. And so that's one of the things that we watch out for, and one of the things that we learn in some of our conferences that we do. Robin and I actually are going to a conference next month, which is an educational travel conference about our industry, and there'll be sessions on how to deal with emergencies like that, and risk management also, which is very important. So yeah, that was it. If I want to inject something, an interesting story about our alumni connections on trips, we did have two guys that had gone to school together, graduated together, but didn't know each other from class of 1971, I believe it was. And they met on one of our trips, and then they became fast friends afterwards, they and their wives, and they started traveling together on trips. And I thought that was very interesting. UVA wasn't very large back then, so it's kind of interesting that their paths just didn't cross. They were separate fraternities, and they maybe heard one another's names but never actually met. So that was one of my interesting.
We hear so many stories about friends that are made on the trips and that they continue to travel together. It's great that happens.
Yes.
I love hearing about those stories. Robin, one of the programming components of our alumni learning, lifetime learning, is here on grounds at the University of Virginia. It's called More Than the Score, and it occurs before our football games in the fall. It's a chance to hear a faculty speaker. It is a chance to get together with a group of folks and do something besides tailgate before the football games. You guys have something similar, right? It's called Back to Class, and it's also prior to fall football games. Can you talk a little bit about how those lectures have been received, how the program maybe has been improving or changed, and how are folks engaging with it?
Our Back to Class program this fall was probably one of our most successful because it offered a really diverse group of lectures from the engineering school to things in the humanities to the med school. It really, and the business school, brought in things from the graduate schools. It also underscored some of the things that were happening in the undergraduate school. It's a terrific opportunity to bring people together who come for the football games. We also found this year we got a number of students that came, which was great. And all the alumni loved to meet the students. So it was a wonderful opportunity for those connections to be made. Some of the professors that were giving the lectures, I don't want to say they forced their students to come, but they advertised heavily. And so some of those students showed up, and that's pretty impressive at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning on a college campus. Yeah. But we had great lectures this fall, and what was wonderful about it too, what's great about the program, Hanover is an area that attracts, much like Charlottesville, I'm sure, attracts a number of people who return to retire to this area. And this is a terrific program for those people who are alumni who have returned to the area to live, to come on Saturday morning and then take in the football game as well. So it isn't always out-of-towners who are here. It's people who are in the Upper Valley themselves.
We have that situation too, and they drive up our real estate prices a lot.
That's true here too.
That's great. Kevin, talking about some of the on-campus, on-grounds here components of the programming. You guys have a heavy presence during the reunions program in the spring. I actually went on my first Cav travel program up at Monticello. Back to not too long after I started. Could you talk a little bit about the on-grounds programming that you guys have, kind of piggybacking off of the reunion events?
Yes, that's one of the ways that we keep our program robust. That we have a big presence during reunions. We set up a table, in Alumni Hall, and as events happen, even as registration happens, and people come by our tables and we chat with them, or we'll see travelers, we'll meet them, especially if we know that they're coming. Ahead of time, we'll definitely look for them. And then we also help the reunions committee with excursions, and so we'll do the excursion that you went on up to Monticello, and then down to Ashland Highland, and do lunch there together and whatnot. And then we'll also, I'll step on the bus and introduce myself and introduce the Capital Travels program, and let them know a little bit about it, but not a whole lot, just kind of a 5-minute thing. And we consider it, and we also work with the other reunions as well, like the medical school alumni reunions, and so we can also have access to their folks, but also have a presence there, trying to connect with past travelers, but also trying to generate some new travelers, to be honest. And so I also give a seminar during our reunions, since we have speakers throughout the weekend, and I do it's called Around the World with Capital Travels. It used to be Around the World in 90 minutes with Capital Travels, but they shortened me to 75 minutes, and it didn't sound as as tweaky. And then there, I'll just show a little movie for a 3-4 minute movie that kind of integrates pictures from the trips, and so people can kind of see what it's like on a trip. And then I'll have 1 or 2 faculty lecturers who actually speak on the trips, have them give like a 20-minute presentation, and maybe a talk that they would actually give on a trip. And then we'll have staff there also in the back, so that at the end of the lecture, people can come back and chat with us and ask questions. We actually had a registration for a trip one time at a reunion seminar. A lady signed up for a trip to Russia because the faculty member had spoken. She got to meet me, and so that was really a neat experience for us.
Awesome. Robin, so let's get sort of down to the stuff for our colleagues here. We're all advancement professionals, right? This is engagement programming, and we're here for a reason. Are your trips, how are they not connected with the advancement office as far as, are they as a fundraising vehicle? Are you sort of using your database, your central database, to kind of offer some notes on things you've learned about folks on the trips? Sort of why or why not are they connected?
Well, our office is part of Alumni Relations, and at Dartmouth, Alumni Relations is part of advancement along with development, but we are the engagement part of advancement. And our travel and our continuing education programs are not specifically about fundraising. That said, we utilize that database. We learn about our travelers. We learn about the people that are coming to some of our events, but they are not targeted at our events. And it's very important that they're not, because that's why they come. They want this to be a relaxing engagement experience where they know that that's not going to happen. That said, I will say we have done one development trip, but we were very clear and upfront with the travelers that were on that trip that that was specifically what it was for. Whether we do another one, that remains to be seen. We have made no decisions about doing anything like that again in the future. But I will repeat, because I think it's very similar to Kevin's situation, we're about engagement in a different way with our travelers and with the alumni in that way.
Mm. Kevin, I saw you nodding your head, and we've talked about this quite a bit lately, as we are now here at the University of Virginia, alumni and parent engagement and annual giving. We are one big happy family here as of July 1. And so some things all underneath the advancement umbrella. And so Kevin, as you're thinking about this, these concepts, you're a relationship manager, an advancement officer. Is that how you think of things?
That's exactly it. My job is, it looks like I'm selling travel, but I'm really not. I'm an advancement officer for the university, and it's to advance the interests of the university. And development, of course, is very important to a public university, one that aspires to continue growing. And I love development. My boss, reports to Vice President of Advancement, which is development, and so we know where our bread is buttered. We don't ask for money on trips, and the reason we don't typically send development officers on trips is that the people would quit buying from us. They would start traveling with Dartmouth or someone else, or the New York Times Sunday News, because they're, if they can afford to go on our trips and they have the time, then they've come across development, not only our development, but also from their local museums and their local zoos and other things that they're involved with, so they know what development is about and what development officers are about. And we want them to feel comfortable and relaxed on their vacation and not feel like that they're being, that we only care about their money. We're trying to say we care about you as an alum, and we're created this great program for you, or we're doing these other things. So it's more than just about money. The relationship is kind of a two-way street, and we want them to be relaxed and enjoy our trips. And also we want them to come back on another trip next year and another trip the following year. And so that's why it's very important to kind of keep a line there. However, I am an advancement officer, and if I find out information that somebody is interested in donating to a certain part of the university, I will report that information up the chain and to our development officers that might be dealing with it. I too have done a development trip. We did it last year, specifically targeting donors to a particular fund, and it was kind of an appreciation / stewardship of these donors. And we made it very, very clear, as did Robin, that it was a development type of trip. Now, there wasn't a development officer on the trip. I was on the trip, but one of the faculty members who had benefited from the fund was the lead faculty member, and we were able to get these donors talking to one another, which was really, really neat. And a couple large donors that had never really met each other, and got them together on this trip, and they ended up having dinner, and they still communicate now after a year and a half after that trip. Now, it also should mention that people like that do get invited to my suite or to parties, and they see each other and like, oh, hey, Dave, what's up? And kind of I help to foster that mutual, mutual love of the university and mutual love of giving to the university. But I'm not, I don't ask Again, we do have some development officers who have wisely figured out that people love to talk about travel, and so they'll come and get our catalogs, especially early in the season, and also some brochures, and take them along with their visits, and kind of use it as an icebreaker with their constituents, and people love to talk about travel, and if you get them talking about that first, then it kind of gets them in a good mood and kind of sets a tone for the rest of the meeting, and so some development officers do use it in that way.
Could I just add one thing to
Yeah.
what Kevin said? You know, I too am an advancement officer, so we're sensitive to listening. I think the important thing we have on our trips and at our special events is we learn things because we listen and we engage and we have conversations with the alumni. And if something is really of value, we do speak about it when we come back, and with, of course, the alumni understand this as well, that this is all part of our learning more about them, so that the college can speak to them about things that are important to them.
Yeah, so it's not just about getting to know someone's giving potential, right? It's about getting to know folks as far as what their passions are and how you can get them more engaged. I think that's exactly right. Sort of the next kind of questions, guys, are both a faculty questions and then sort of thinking about the future a little bit. Robin, what would you say is sort of the hardest part about sort of primarily working with faculty? Is there a lot of interest with sort of getting faculty to go on trips? Do you have to poke them with a stick and plead for faculty to go out on the road for you? How does that go?
It's challenging, and it's challenging because people always say to me, in fact, someone said yesterday, isn't it easy to get faculty to go on trips? And it's not always, for a variety of reasons. It's not that they wouldn't like to, but they have busy schedules. They're teaching. At Dartmouth, they have heavy teaching schedules, so trying to get on their schedule is challenging. A lot of our professors also have young families, and they have commitments to their families at home. So again, that's challenging. Not every professor is perfect for a trip. They might be better at a Dartmouth on location, a one-night lecture. We get to know. Our department is the conduit for faculty connections with alumni relations because we get to know the faculty so well on campus. We know who are the best for what aspects of our education programs. And one of the things that's really interesting to us is a lot of the faculty have to be persuaded because they have what they consider to be a very narrow specialty. We know they're knowledgeable in many, many areas, and they can fit at many geographical locations, but they're a little insecure sometimes about speaking to certain subjects that may not be their absolute specialty. Interestingly enough, if we can persuade them to go on those trips, they rise to the occasion. They are absolutely fantastic. They learn about anything that they might not know in depth, and they become so knowledgeable. So we try to encourage them to look beyond the narrowness of perhaps what their thesis was up to a bit broader aspect. For example, if somebody says, my specialty is a certain type of art, we say, well, you are a specialist in art in general, and usually they learn so much ahead of time. They say, gee, I think I'd like to add that to my curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
A couple questions that are coming in from Twitter, guys. I wanted to make sure that I get to them. Excuse me, as I clear my throat. Kristen Simonetti at Case Current wanted to know, are there any examples of alums who made a gift related to a trip or a gift process that started with an alumni travel program? Can you guys think of sort of some connections to some giving opportunities? Yeah.
I have a very specific one that I'm still in the process of dealing with, actually. I took a group last year to Burma, and it was a smaller trip. I think we had about 10 people, and the Burmese people were so nice and so welcoming, and we were at this one village that our tour director knew the village, and we were trying to walk across the village to meet with the mayor to have tea. We didn't know that. It was going to be a secret, that the tour director, a surprise for us. But we kept getting invited into people's homes, and the alum that I was traveling with loved that. And so we'd get invited into the house, and we would chat with the the owner of the house or the family, and this kept happening over and over again. So they just loved this village, and then we ended up with the mayor, and we got to hear what he was doing for the village and how he brought electricity there and all these other benefits that he had done for the village. From the villagers were telling us this as well, and that they had started a school, but they had run out of money. They hadn't finished the roof on the school. I mean, this is extremely poor area of Myanmar. And so the alum on the trip decided that night that they wanted to start a little fund to help this village. And so I got back here to the university. We set up an account in our foundation system, and then they started donating, asking each other to donate, and we have almost $10,000 in that account already, which is pretty amazing. So we have to figure out how to, we're working with an NGO to get the supplies into the village and help them finish the school, but also what we can do in the long term. And so that's one example. We have noticed that travelers are 4 times as likely to donate to the university as the normal alumni population, and that their donor rates are higher. Now, some of that goes naturally with aging, I guess, but we have noticed a definite correlation between giving and participation in travel events.
Robin, another question from Kristen. Some great questions here on Twitter. Can you think of an alum who contributed in another way besides giving, either as a volunteer or as a career mentor, as a result of a trip? A trip was sort of the engagement catalyst to other ways of getting involved.
Well, both on the trip basis and also from our Dartmouth on location, we have had people who have mentored because we meet them and we understand that they're in a certain occupation, for example. That we had a group of lawyers that came to one of our Dartmouth on locations in Washington, D.C., and they stepped forward with ideas of how they might be able to do some internships in the Washington area. So making that connection worked very well. And I will say, just stepping back to something that does have to do with a donor, we had an interesting story recently where someone who was concerned about some of the areas where he had considered giving in the past took a look at our area, and I have to say it was a little bit, it was great, because one of the things that he's very interested in is the idea of having education on our trips, and we worked with him. He's now helping to make sure that we can take professors on all of our trips. So sometimes things come back to our own programs as well, but it was a way for somebody who wasn't engaged up until then for a number of years to come back to a donor engagement with the college.
Good stuff. So a perfect final question for you both, again from Twitter. Sort of looking at the alumni travel field as the future comes upon us. Talk a little bit about, guys, is alumni travel growing, declining, staying consistent as an engagement option for institutions? Where do you guys see the momentum at this point? Or lack thereof?
Interesting question. I feel like it's growing, but that's also because our market is growing. I do think, so many people are reaching the age of retirement. We have 10,000 baby boomers turning 62. What is it, every day, I think, now for the next 6 years. And so I definitely see it as a growing tool. And I also think as my bosses have discovered that it's such a great engagement tool, I think that word is going to spread among higher education. They're going to, other universities maybe that don't do it the way that we in Dartmouth do it, I think you're going to see more starting to do it that way. Now, we do try to teach our colleagues that in the various conferences and whatnot that we go to, but I think as even as the development world understands the impact that we have and the level of engagement that happens on a trip, I see them putting more emphasis on it and growing the trips. And as the economy is getting better, definitely people are spending more money.
Robin, and do you see an opportunity with sort of the demographic, the target demographic getting younger as well, or no?
Absolutely, but it's different. It's a different demographic. I've had tour operators say to me, "Oh, they're the same." I said, "No, they're not. We truly just did as I mentioned, a big piece of market research, and they do have different reasons for traveling and different things that are important to them when they travel. I mentioned flexibility before. That's a really important factor. As baby boomers come into this market and start to take it over, there will have to be some changes made in some of our trips and in travel in general. And that our travelers love an element of adventure, because baby boomers are never going to consider themselves old. I'm a baby boomer, I know this. My
Right.
generation will never want to consider themselves old. So our trips have to have that great appeal that sort of helps everyone to feel like an adventurer.
Right. Good point.
Fantastic, guys. Any sort of closing thoughts before we wrap things up? That may have been a nice little stopping point.
It might have been. One other benefit that I feel that we bring to the university, and I forgot to mention earlier, was that we're getting these faculty out to see things that they've been teaching about, maybe for 20 plus years. So, especially I use a lot of art history professors, faculty, and also, like biology and environmental sciences, and we're getting them out to see the Galapagos and to see the Great Barrier Reef and to go see, the Renaissance painters and different forms of art that they've been teaching. And so I think that's another quality that we bring to a university, and make the students' experience even better, because these faculty are speaking to something that they've actually seen or they've actually experienced. I just wanted to interject that. Sorry.
Yeah, great stuff. An angle I hadn't even thought of.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin and Robin, thank you so much for joining Advancement Live today. I thought that was a great show, and I think everyone else will find watching the broadcast whenever they have time a great opportunity. So please do it in a very short amount of time. I will send you guys the link to the show, and please don't hesitate to pass it around to anyone who might be interested. For everyone who is watching live, thanks so much for taking the time to participate. I really do appreciate it. And we'll have the show posted up on higheredlive.com here shortly. I will be returning early next month with a show. I think we've almost formalized it to head back to Australia and interview some of the alumni engagement team at the University of Queensland, as well as perhaps some of the folks working in their North America office. So that'll be interesting to talk about how alumni relations is working down under and how that's coordinated here in the United States. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. It is Ryan here at the University of Virginia signing off from Advancement Live. Thank you.
Thanks.